Right, you lot! And I have some terrible news for you. I'm doing another album. I've just seen about like 5,000 people fall to their knees in the local Tesco. Bloody hell. Broadband 5, eh? Or 2 if you don't consider the first 3 music, which I think is very valid. And obviously this is quite a major album, as I already spoiled a few months ago. This is my last album working with Dakili, and I didn't want him to go out on a whimper. And I don't think we have. Of course I'm going to say that, I'm selling the bloody album. This album is kind of all over the place sonically, and you know what I say to that is I don't really care. I like to make a range of songs that all come together over some thematic themes and show that my mind state at the period that I was writing it. And that's all that really matters to me. You know, I tried with 4M Thoughts to have this weird 50-50 blend, but with Nostalgia, whatever said goes. This was an album that had quite a few iterations and versions throughout time. It was originally had a whole different name with a pretty much completely different track list with a whole host of different songs, with only a few that would actually remain on the final cut. But then, because my music is so tied to my life, things happen, you want to write about it, and you throw other ideas out the window. Nostalgia, unlike other albums that I've done, has a very specific theme. Most of the songs are about the centrepiece, and it's very much about my school friend group and kind of why it kind of collapsed, or at least fell from what it once was. So retrospective on that, and also mainly focusing on my complicated relationship with the 3 people I was probably closest to there post leaving, and the ups and downs that they have had mostly. I think it made sense to do this now and to kind of put a pin in it. The period that I'm kind of pulling from when it comes to writing is very much 5 months from last year, of August to December, and pretty much 95% of this album has already aged incredibly poorly. Like, it's almost comical. But when I write songs, I very much write them to capture certain moments in my life, certain feelings, certain points, and to kind of have it as a signpost and a postcard, and like, this is this moment in time, and it doesn't really matter how badly it ages or if I don't feel this way anymore, because it shows and validates how I felt in that moment. And I think that is a lot of nostalgia. It brings a certain thoughts, a certain night, certain moments, and puts them tenfold. I think I've gone out my comfort zone a lot of times, and we'll break down as we go through each track what I've done. I think Nostalgia, I played it kind of stripped back. A lot of these songs were recorded in a studio. I think 4M Thoughts, we went over the top with ideas and different certain bits. I think here that was there to an extent, but I think vocally I've kind of found my pocket and not tried to be too ambitious, and I'm quite happy with most of my performances on this album as compared to 4M Thoughts, which has some noticeable tracks that are vocally stronger than others. Nostalgic in a way. I think it feels like everything that maybe something like Progress should have been. And yeah, I'm quite happy to share it. So what I'm going to do is go through the 13 tracks, talk a bit about what they sound like, a bit of context you might need, a bit about meaning of the lyrics and stuff. And I'm going to give you a little snippet and a little teaser. And for the the opening track is called Old Cellmate. Seeing scenes in a blur, wildness, chaos, no care in the world. Children's games, we were too old to play. This wasn't the opening track like a week ago, but when I played through the album Bruce, we decided let's change the track list last minute and put this for. Old Cellmates is a Dakili track. It is probably the most impressive thing he's ever made. I said, okay, if we're going to leave the band after this, we want this to be remembered. We want you to do something that's going to blow people away. So I wanted to experiment with track lengths on this album, because when you listen to a Broadband album, you kind of expect each track to be 3.5 to 4.5 minutes. There's outliers, but on a mean average, that's the number. Here we've got 6-minute tracks like this one. We've got 2 minutes. We've got 1.5 minutes. We've got nearly 7 minutes. Like, I wanted to be more ambitious. And Old Cellmates, I think, is a truly beautiful track instrumentally. It's got this kind of big feel to it. There's some big instrumental breaks where he really goes over the top. It's very ambient feeling. It feels massive. There's bittersweet feel the whole time, and even in the way I vocally phrase it, it's a song very much about reminiscing. You know, there is a lot of nostalgia in it, but there's also kind of that reflective of where did it go wrong, but also why it's so difficult it's gone wrong, and all the good that it's come from, and why I can't let go in certain places. You know, it's a very complex. Yeah, I'm very happy with Old Cellmates. I think we stripped it back, played it quite simple. Like, there isn't many vocal effects going on here. I'm not doing too much. It very much speaks for itself, and I let Lakili do a lot of the heavy lifting here. I almost was debating calling Old Cellmates Lakili's interlude, because I feel like this track, really more than any other, belongs to him and the incredible legacy that he's going to leave behind from working with Broadband, everything he's done. Okay, the second track is called The Last Summer.
I can't take it, I can't face it, wasn't ready for this to be. Last summer, summer.
This one very much is the most kind of interlude-like of the song. It's a straightforward classic piano ballad. You know it if you've heard a Broadband album. Lakili is a master at doing this sort of stuff. This is one of his tracks, by the way. I'm really happy with what we did vocally with The Last Summer. It's quite like a basic song lyrically. It's very much like, I don't want this to be the last summer. This can't be over yet. I'm not ready to let go, sort of thing. And it very much plays the interlude into track 3, which is another Lakili track, the first single.
Gonna be my best man. Now that I'm wisdom, what am I gonna do? No disillusion, pissing endlessly in my empty room. Don't know rereading this and nothing. How did it end? Nobody gets it like I will. I lost so much more than a friend.
Now you've probably heard Best Man. Best Man, I wanted to do something more R&B, more slowed, and I think it kind of, there's a lot of complexity here, because not only am I kind of saying how devastated I am to kind of lose his friendship, but also that accountability, which I think was always lacking in a lot of Broadband albums. I was way too much like, oh, you're the issue. It just felt a bit narcissistic, a lot of, which I know, okay, it's my albums, I'm allowed to play the main character, but it felt like a lot of time I wasn't holding myself accountable. I think Best Man is a very balanced track in that sense. We did a lot in kind of vocal effects, especially kind of the third chorus. There's kind of, we use this in the next track as well, which I'll talk about, but it's more like pitched up, almost like rap typical vocals they use in couple track, and I think it really works here. Best Man, I played it so much, it maybe can get tired. It's not my strongest vocal form, but I was very happy, and I think it had to be the first single for this. Track 4 is called September.
There's not another September. I cannot take it. I cannot accept that it's over. Lost no composure. Everything's changed, but the lights are the same. There's not another September, and you're not.
September was pretty much the only track, minus like one other I think, that was on the OG version of what this album was going to be, and stayed there the whole time. I always wanted September. I became a massive fan of 1975, pretty much through writing 4M Thoughts and into the summer where I started working on this one. I wanted to do some indie pop. I wanted to kind of use their vocal inflections, do those backing vocals, and yeah, September is a pretty fun song, sonically, but trying to, you know, being dramatic, and it's like, oh, you're never going to see these people again, even though they've fallen out with you, and in reality, they'll be back. And spoiler, they were back. But it's a very much, it's a character study of the time, and it's a really kind of memorable track. I think maybe it's not our strongest vocal performance, I'll put my hands up, but I think September works very well. It is another Lakili track, by the way, but finally we get onto the first release track. A lot of them are more on the back half. With Counting Sheep.
It's so familiar. Let me go away, shit. This snippet won't risk it. Bridges, yeah, I'm scared of love. One of them Pandora's bow. Wanna hand it to me from a love, my boner is blown up and a children night.
Counting Sheep was very different for me from kind of any other song that I've ever made, because usually I have a vague idea of this is the title, this is what I want it to sound like, and this is even a vague idea of some lyrics that I might use. Counting Sheep was like, it almost feels like a Supremacy B-side that ended up on a Broadband album, and that is not a negative, because it kind of feels a bit more stripped back. It's got a nice kind of buzz to it. And of course it does have a Reese feature. He features 3 times on this project. I'll tell you where the other 2 are. This is the first one. Counting Sheep was like, okay, you make an instrumental in your style. I'm not going to give it anything. I'm going to go in completely blind. You do a verse, then I'm going to just write something. And there's a lot of things covered in this verse. It's not as straightforward as like all the other track, which is like, okay, we're very much zero in on one specific aspect. This is just kind of, yeah, counting sheep, late at night, all the different things I'm thinking about. It kind of almost sonically like, and lyric-wise could be a 4am Thoughts track, and that's no indictment on 4am Thoughts, obviously, that's positive. But yeah, it was an experiment, this one. It's about 2.5 minutes, it's a bit on the shorter side, and we had a lot of fun making it. Track 6 is called Hero Complex.
To be given no narcissistic tendency made me believe I'm out at more. Need soul searching, priory, open that door. Is you, it's the stuff you're avoiding. Every mirror is you, it's the stuff I can't do.
Another Reese track. This was actually the last track that was finished for the album, and it was the second single, because we were just about happy with it. Hero Complex, again, lyrically is going into the more kind of accountability aspect of like, oh, just stop, mate, you're doing too much. Kind of reflecting on the situation and thinking, yeah, maybe they had a right to move on with their life and leave you behind, because you're a bit like pushing, aren't you? Really like what the sound that we went for with this one, what he was able to do with my vocal performance. I think we bring back a lot of vocal layering, but it's kind of like an evolutionized version of what we're trying to do for him. I just think Hero Complex, the moment we heard it, we were like, yeah, this has to be the second single. Originally I was going to have Counting Sheep and Spiraling as single 2 and 3, but Counting Sheep, you're just an album track now. Hero Complex had to be a single, and I was that happy with it. Okay, track 7, we're back to Nikini with White Rabbit and the Red.
White Rabbit and the Red Queen. She must be singing, yeah, demonic jealousy, yeah. White Rabbit and the Red Queen.
This was the other song that was on the original version and never left. It's very indie pop inspired, it's very, you know, kind of upbeat. I wanted to do a song where I'm not an entity in it. I wanted to write someone else's story. This song is about a friend of mine who was having a questionable situation with a girl who were accused of things that just were ridiculous and she had absolutely no evidence for it, and no one really backed her, but just the words on its own held a lot of weight to him. And yeah, I'm not an entity in this song, and I kind of had fun with it. It may not be, you know, the vocal tone that I use. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I think Reese has said this is probably his least favourite, which is a shame. But yeah, I think some people really like this one, and you know, it kind of really builds, and I kind of had fun. It was just fun to change it up and to write about something a bit different, which I think is the direction I want to go with the next project, to kind of challenge myself in terms of writing, I think. Track 8 is called Hamster Well. This is another Reese track, and it's the second feature of his. Hamster Well is, I call it like an introvert's anthem. It was based off me kind of going to a party where I didn't really know anybody and kind of just flopping like a fish, really. Like an absolute clown. And it's kind of like that isolation of like, you know, being an extrovert at heart but having introverted tendencies when you actually get into the spot, you know. I think that's what I've gone for Hamster Wheel. I really like kind of vocally. It's more experimental, this track, I think. We tried some stuff. This won't be able to compete. Reese's verse is kind of early Tyler inspired. like Goblin era. Don't worry, none of the kind of lyrics you'd expect on an early Goblin song is there. But yeah, this had a complete revamp because Reese wasn't meant to be here. We completely changed it, and I like the final version. It's not more interesting. Okay, now the final 5 tracks are all kind of one arc, and there was even debate to make this a solo EP, but then it was just like, well, I had 8 other tracks, so you might as well just stick at the end. I kind of realised as I was writing this, I kind of created a 5 stages of grief situation with these final 5 tracks, where they're all kind of about the same thing, and all stem from kind of someone dropping a bombshell out of nowhere, and revealing a bunch of things, which just were the last things you needed in that moment. And that's kind of the thesis, and yeah, there's a lot of range covered, and I accidentally did this 5 stages of grief thing, and I was like, well, I might as well commit to it. So the first track, this is another Reese track, it is kind of, I guess, the denial track, and it's called How. Now, How will probably be most people's favourite Brilliant song because I'm not actually on it. Yeah, this is a Reese creation. It is gritty, it is hard to access, it is intense. I think some people are going to be, you know, a bit stunned by this track. But it's meant to kind of capture the shock when you get that information. And yeah, I'm really happy with how turned out. I think it's just insane and so incredibly done. Then track 10, another Reese track, we've got probably my favourite. Either that or Old Cellmates, so go back and forth. I can't do this shit again. Hey boy, just get out my fucking head. Spiraling is, I became a massive fan of Jane Remover. It's kind of this kind of noise pop, indie pop, you know, intense kind of track, but it's not as extreme as things you'd hear on Revenge because it is toned down a bit. The anger here is a bit like a kitten trying to roar, because, you know, I'm not very good at being mad, and it's kind of seen by Spiraling. I think it captured a very specific moment in my life which I don't really prescribe to anymore, but I think it captures that moment so perfectly. And we actually get Reese as a feature on this one as well, and he's actually singing from my perspective, because what we didn't want to do was sing that we were singing to each other, because that would be completely inappropriate on a track like this. But yeah, I think sonically, what we were able to do with my voice, the way I work on this kind of sound, it's just a really fun track all around. Track 11 is called Talk.
If we could reignite, you're with me, that we feel reignite. Where do we stand? I'm scared of the dark. If we could tell like we used to, I know we'd find a way out there. That would be bliss, that would be it. I absolutely promise. We could tell like we used to, I know we'd find a way out of this.
Talk is another Achille one, and it may be my favourite Achille band. I wanted to do kind of a straightforward. This is kind of the bargaining track, I guess. It's kind of like, you could just sit down. It's kind of like, you know, when you watch a TV show and you think, oh, if 2 characters could just have a conversation, like the whole thing could just be solved, but they got to drag it out for the suspense. That's what this situation kind of felt like. It's like, if you just sat down, put all your cards on the table, it could be evaporated quicker than Witch and the Wizard of Oz when they throw the water over, right? And Talk is quite straightforward, it's quite earnest in delivery, but I really like what we're able to do vocally. I think the mix is really cool for this track. I hope you enjoy it. It is called Ilias Montero. Elias. I've heard both pronunciations. I say Ilias in the song, but it's probably pronounced Elias.
So fleeting, wrapped in bittersweet. It's not fair. What is everyone gonna be me? You'll never be my Ilias, because fairy tales ain't real. And picturing in summer, a child is ideal.
This song is named after a character from a Dutch film called Young Hearts, which is a film that I watched last summer and really connected with, to the point I named the song after the lead character. It's a film about these two boys and kind of discover his sexuality, and they get quite close, and it's kind of this sweet, romanticized film, which just shows, innocent queer love at a young age, right? And the thing is, most people didn't get that. It was a bit too perfect. It was usually more complicated than that, and I think many young queer people didn't kind of get that experience. I think it's kind of that. It was like, yeah, I'd love an Elias, but you're never gonna be that for me, and that might be okay, but it's still sad. And that's what I've kind of gone for with it, and that's kind of the depression song, which leads into the final track, which is another Reese one, by the way. Ilias was an Akili track. Is Dear Asher.
We so felt suddenly, thought this would bring us peace. Years wash away, so much I didn't say. Now I'm powerless to make you stay. I don't blame you for putting your mind at peace, but did you feel for a second what it do to me? Now I'm bloodshot and afraid to dream, cause I still never will be.
Now, Dear Asher is probably like the one track on here which I don't really care what you think about it, and I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. Like, I needed to make this song at the time. We spent 3 months on this track. It is the most I've ever spent. It's 6 minutes. It's got about 4 parts. There's like a spoken word section. There's this kind of shoegaze section. There's this like noise section, and then this more like ambient, like singer-songwriter section where we sample Twin Fantasy. It's very Jane inspired. It's like Movie for Guys meets Kodak Moment, if you've heard Frailty. That's kind of the sound of this track. And lyrically, it's kind of just like, it's summing up the whole thing. I guess attempting to find closure in it all. And yeah, I think it's hard to listen to now because of how much, obviously, things have changed since. But it really captured what I needed at that moment. And I think it's, this, I don't know how it will translate. We spent so much time, it almost felt like a kid who keeps like painting over painting until it all goes brown, and we were worried that was happening. We tinkered with this so much to the point it almost doesn't feel like human anymore, not in like a bad way, but yeah. So I wanted this to be the magnum opus. I think Spider-Man was better and it took half the time, but you may disagree, so yeah. It is going to be out on the 19th, on the 17th of July. Midnight British Standard Time, whatever that is, rest of the bloody world. Enjoy it. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm probably going to put the whole album video on here. And I've got the 3rd single, which is Spider, which is coming out next week. So yeah, I will see you lot soon. Goodbye.